Betty Friedan is widely heralded as the mother of second-wave feminism. Her 1963 book, The Feminine Mystique, opened doors for housewives to voice their dissatisfaction with the expectations placed upon them. But Friedan was also a polarizing and often prickly figure. Rachel Steyer explores the many sides of the author and activist in her new book, Betty Friedan, Magnificent Disruptor. WCBU correspondent Steve Tarter interviewed Steyer about her fascination with the Peoria-born feminist.
Many women came up to Betty Friedan over the years and said, "You changed my life." And what they meant was they had read The Feminine Mystique and they had felt less alone than they had previously because she diagnosed or illustrated, described the condition that they were feeling.
You know, and your book details Betty Friedan's sort of rise, her life, obviously, that involved a lot of writing. But, you know, she's such a character. And I'm getting this not firsthand, but, from the other sources, and sometimes that can be, distracting. But she's a character because she's not always, you mentioned that people say you changed my life. I know in your book, you say to some of those people, she said, "Yeah, I hear that a lot." You're like, get away from me.
Yeah. I mean, that came out of, yes, she did say that. And you could say, oh, that's not very gracious. But I actually think she was at heart kind of shy. And she, I think sometimes she didn't know what to say when women came up to her and said that. And she wasn't always ready to receive it or be gracious. I think sometimes it felt like a burden. And I think especially in later years when, she wrote that book in the late 50s and things changed so much for women in the 60s and 70s. And I think she felt like she wanted to evolve and she wanted other people to understand that she had evolved since she had written the book. And so for people to continually come up to her and talk about her first book and how great it was, I think sometimes she felt, as I said, like it was a burden or something.
Rachel, the book that she started in the 50s got published in the early 60s. Did that, in your research, did it surprise her, the impact of that book?
Yes. I think it surprised and delighted her. I think she was excited to be in the middle of this enormous, almost uprising of women. It's hard to imagine this now, but based on accounts from her papers and other sources, when you read about her going out on book tour, basically, and, meeting women who had read the book, it sounds like she instantly became a celebrity and she just was mobbed. And I think she was very excited to be in the middle of this conversation. I think that made her feel consequential. It made her feel like she had done something that was important and that all of the hard years of working on this book were worth it.
I know in your book you mentioned, it came out in hardback, but I think where the book really changed the world was when it went to paperback.
Yes.
And those sales, people, I think, forget now. I don't know if paperbacks, their relevance in the digital era, but back then in the 63, 4 era, you sell 1.4 million copies of a paperback. That's like the Beatles. That's crazy. That's success.
Yes, it's a success. And also she was in demand as a speaker at all different sorts of venues across the country. She traveled very widely. And then the book, of course, was translated into other languages. And she traveled to Europe. And it became a touchstone for the culture. It became this, gateway through which women passed to reach the 60s. It's really interesting when you think about what books from the 20th century are we still talking about today? What nonfiction books?
Right.
And I don't know what the other ones are. I would have to think about this. Certainly there's novels like The Great Gatsby that we still talk about. But in terms of nonfiction books, this is one that stands out to me. This year, 2023, is the 60th anniversary of The Feminine Mystique, and we are still arguing about what it means. Should we read it? Should we argue with it? Should we throw it in the trash? What should we do? To me, that all signifies that the book has a kind of lasting importance.
And I think it's certainly not the biggest, but just one of the things I think that is part of its success, that title, The Feminine Mystique. Yes. And where did she get that? Was that something that she pulled from somebody else's characterization?
Yeah, I am not sure. I'm sorry to say, I'm not sure about where that title came from exactly. I agree with you. It's very evocative. It was not the original title for the book. And there are two. The feminine mystique was one phrase that she used to describe this condition that women were being forced into. And then the other one was the problem that had no name. And I don't know exactly what the provenance of either of the specific provenance of either of those phrases. I'm sorry to say, I should know this. But what I will say is I think that Betty was gifted at creating these phrases that caught the imagination of the public. She did that throughout her life in a lot of her different public writing and speaking. It seems like she was able to come up with these phrases that just people were like, oh, what's that? What does that mean? Et cetera.